One of the most difficult subjects that I've had to face teaching thousands of woodworkers through the years about wood and woodworking is how to work with the grain, how to understand the grain, what the grain is. It's one thing looking at the surface of a piece of wood and saying, oh, I love the color, I love the texture and all of those things. But when you're working with the wood inside, you're getting into the nitty-gritty of the grain, you have to start looking at the wood very differently. One of the best ways I've found to explain to my students through the years is that wood is just like a bunch of straws. So here I've got my tree growing, it branches out at the top, all these long cells are reaching up for the sun, they're reaching up to the sky, and they do all manner of things. They bend, the tree bends, the branches flail out, the stem twists like this, it does all kinds of things. And we've got to learn to work with that grain. So here are the things that I have to contend with every day of my life. Here I've got a piece of wood. This is a piece of oak. It's growing up. And then all of a sudden it branches off. One of those branches takes off and it delivers a knot right in the middle of the piece I'm working with. I've got to understand what to do with that. I've got to work with that. And you can work with it. But what you have to look at mostly is when you're sawing and planing the wood. Here I've got a piece of wood, and if you look at the grain, it's working pretty parallel to the surface, and then all of a sudden it comes up here, it's coming to a point here. I've got a pin knot here. That means that the branch was being accommodated within the structure and the fiber of the wood. So I've got that. Then I've got this beautiful straight grained wood, and when I want to plane it, I don't have any questions. It will plane, it will saw, it will do everything I want it to do. So let me give you a little example. Here is my arch here. I've just made a table. I've built into this arch the structural problems that I'm talking about, because what I've got is fairly straight grained wood down here, but now if I take a spoke shave or a plane or anything like that, I take my spoke shave and I'm cutting down here, I'm doing great. It's smooth as silk, it's doing great. But when I come to the other side, and I come up this side, now I'm going into the end grain fibers and it's chewing it all to pieces, and this is where you get frustrated because that's not what you wanted. To correct this, I would have to come from this side and go down the hill, and then all of a sudden it's working, but I've got to stop in the middle. So what's happening there is I've got my long strands of wood in this lower portion here underneath, but then I come to this portion on either side and I stagger this. I've got this coming here. So when I bring my spoke shave in this direction, I'm coming along the bottom of that valley. I come up here and that's grabbing those ends of those straws and those fibers. That's what's happening. If I turn around and come the other way and go down this way, it's commensurate with the grain. So that's what's happening with the wood, and that's what we've got to understand. So whenever I think about wood, I start thinking about it very differently. I think about the tree and I think about the stem bending and all of those things. So what does this mean? So when you start your saw on the wood, any saw, it doesn't matter what kind of saw, if you start on this back stroke here, what you're really doing, on the back corner should I say, you're really starting here. If I just let this float on the surface, it's grabbing the wood and it's not going, and that's because the straws are being grabbed on the end like this. If I go from this side, it goes straight into the wood and it's ripping beautifully. That's because if I go from this side like this, it just slices in between those long strands. The strands again are commensurate to the attitude of the saw to it. So what we've got to do is consider this wood. When we're going down here, we're creating a problem. Start here, we've got less of a problem. Start here, and it just flows as smoothly as can be. I'm learning to work with the grain. I'm not necessarily reading the grain. If I go across the grain with a rip cut saw that has big teeth, like this, immediately it starts to grab the wood. I've got different shaped teeth on that saw to the shape of teeth on this saw. So the saws look the same, but this has pinnacle teeth. They're sharpened to a point and they're designed to cross-cut the grain. So we have to learn to work with the grain constantly. And that's how we overcome the difficulties of working with wood. And this is one of the things I've had to learn about, is what does the grain do, how does it affect the tool, and how can I compensate for it? And that's what the enjoyment is finding out how to master this grain. You have to be able to work with the grain constantly. Here's a couple of extra things that you might want that will help you, I think. If you've got your straws this way, when you see the saw on the surface of the wood, you can't really see too much, but when you do it on the straws, imagine all your wood is a bunch of straws like this. See how it tears, pulls on the grain that direction with a rip saw? When you go this way, it goes right in between the fibers, and that's why you get the smooth cuts. It's really remarkable. Just thinking about the wood as straws will change the whole way that you work with your wood, and you'll understand the nature of the wood. You'll understand the dynamism about it, and I think that's very important. It's been important for me, and it'll be very important for you too.